Hello and welcome to Focus on Liberia. Welcome to our broadcast. I'm Anthony C.A. hosting. Welcome and welcome. If you are just joining us, we will ask you to do us that usual favor. Hit that share button. There is a conversation that we must have, but I have a gentleman joining me in this conversation. Yeah, he is. He's all set to have this conversation. I want to welcome somebody I call a dear friend, Mr. Larry Kennedy. Larry, we are happy to have you here. Welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thanks for inviting me, Anthony. It's a pleasure being here. I've followed Focus on Liberia for a while now, and I really enjoy what you and Dennis have been doing. So it's a pleasure being here, man. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so very much for joining us. Folks watching us, Larry and his partner, Mr. Sam Jackson, in conversation with Focus on Liberia for them to run a program here that will be called The Economist and The Professor. Mr. Jackson should have been here, but he traveled. We couldn't get him on today, but welcome to the show. Why are we talking today? You might be wondering what we might be talking about today is that the Liberian Maritime hires former U.S. Representative Ed for 4 months at a total cost of 100,000 United States dollars. Larry is on this, and he and I are going to discuss this. I'm going to ask him some questions so we can understand. But the first questions that jump out of me, why? Why is the Liberian government making this decision, giving this individual 100,000 just for a period of 4 months? Is it a worthwhile investment? Is it going to pay off? Is it a good decision, by the way? But that is why you need to be here, so you and all of us can get the understanding about this decision that is being made by our government through the maritime organization, whether or not it would benefit Liberia. So let me come back to you, Mr. Kennedy. Again, we can't welcome you enough. So a decision has been made, right?
Yeah, so let's put it in perspective. I want you, Anthony, to try to first remember that in 2014, when James Buddy was interviewing Beaufort Chambers, Chambers accused Madam Sirleaf at that time of spending in excess of $200 million on foreign lobbying. Now, that was an outrageous number. I mean, you can check with the U.S. government's website. That number wasn't totally accurate, but she was spending a lot of money. I think at that time she reported she spent a little over $300,000. But within the past 5 years, and let's look at your question. You're asking, is it worth it?
Yeah.
To a certain extent, it may be, but not at the price the Liberian government is paying, because it's not going to get them anything. I don't believe it's going to get them anything for the reason that Ed Royce, if you go back to 2006, he was one of the people who dogged Charles Taylor. He's been on this whole human rights agenda. Ed Royce, Susan Rice, the Chris Smith, that the Liberian government has been paranoid and panicking about making certain statements. Chris Smith will also partner with Ed Royce in hounding Charles Taylor, right? Ed Royce has been a very influential person. I met Ed Royce along with Costa over at the U.S. Global Leadership Conference a couple of years ago. We had some conversations. Who is Ed Royce? Well, he was one of the sponsors for something called AGOA, AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunity Act, right? Okay. Ed Royce helped a lot of African countries. If you wanted to ship something from Liberia to, say, America, you won't pay taxes on it. That was huge. He was also one of the champions for the MCC, right? The whole Millennium Challenge Corporation, which is great. But Ed Royce has a contradiction right now. He has an issue. You can't be a champion for human rights for years, and then you see the 2020 U.S. Human Rights Report comes out indicting the current administration for human rights violation, and then you turn around, throw out your career work and start working for them. Is he really doing any lobbying for maritime? Of course not. That's nonsense, right? Look at the reality of it.
Yeah, that sounds like a direct employment, right?
It's an employment. It's nonsense. He's not doing anything for maritime. In fact, Anthony, do you know that he was getting paid $10,000 a month by Liska last year? So
Seriously.
if Liska was paying him $10,000 a month, why is it that Eugene Nangbe is putting out a statement, or why is it they're filing saying now he's going to get paid $25,000 a month for the same work that he was doing a few months ago at $10,000 a month?
At $10,000.
It's absolute nonsense, right?
Yes.
Liberia cannot afford it at this moment because the economy is not growing. There's a lot of unemployed people. That money can be put to better use. Anthony, are you aware that within the past 5 years, Liberian government has spent $75,806,000 on lobbying in the US? 75 million.
I know they have been lobbying, but I didn't know that figure, and I don't even know what has been the payoff now since this spending spree has started by them.
Yeah. So you're right. What has been a payoff? There hasn't been, the economy hasn't grown, unemployment has gone down. So when I hear people like Akaris Gray and others saying Weah is the best president of all time, they're not giving the president the right information. Give the president the right information. Be honest. The economy is doing poorly. The fact that they're spending this amount of money and there's nothing in return, you should be concerned. How much do you think Sierra Leone spent on lobbying in Washington, D.C.? Liberia spent a little over 75 million in the same time period. How much do you think Sierra Leone spent? Take a guess.
Well, I would think maybe zero.
And Anthony, you will be the champion because they spent absolutely zero.
No.
They spent nothing. But look at the Sierra Leonean economy. Under Madabio, who came in March of 2018, the Sierra Leone economy has done very well. It has grown while Liberia's economy has gone downhill. So the greatest finance minister of all time, he's struggling. They're spending millions and millions on lobbying. They had Reva KRL, which is Reva running that operation. She didn't really produce anything. So it makes you wonder, what is the return on this investment? How much are we getting back in return for investing all this money, right? 2020, how much did they spend? And this include Liska, because Liska doing some lobbying thing as well, right? 2020, they spent 3,700,000 and something thousand. 2019, they spent a lot of money. They spent a little over $11 million. That's a lot of money, Anthony. That's a lot of money, you know? So it goes back over the past 5 years, 75 million. Now we have Ed Royce coming in at 25,000 per month.
A month.
What is he going to do?
And the question I want to ask Larry is, you said he has been working with Liska for $10,000 a month.
Yep.
And now he's been given more like an upgraded portfolio. Is he going to do anything differently than what he has been doing with Liska, for which he will pay $10,000? Is it just by giving him more money will make him do the same thing he has been doing? And then we have not seen any dividend in terms of investment. A Liberian government up to now, Larry, the government being elected 3 years ago and has not been able to meet the president of the United States, not an invitation whatsoever. So all this expenses they've been making for lobbying, I think that should be the first evidence, right? But not yet. So why continue on this?
So that's great. So it's been challenging, and I'm not going to disclose. I mean, I've been in meetings with a lot of these guys, and because, being a professional banker, there's some fiduciary responsibility that we hold. So I'm not going to share some of the conversation, but I would tell you, I'm operating from an insider perspective, right? So I sat in a meeting at the United Nations with President Weah, and Costa was there. Giuliani was all in that meeting. There were FBI agents surrounding the place. In fact, when we rode the elevator, Reva was even at the hotel as well. She and the former U.S. ambassador to Liberia, what's her name? Greenfield, I believe.
Greenfield, yeah.
Yeah, they were all at that UN General Assembly. And it was interesting when we wrote, because Giuliani, I was in New York during 9/11, and I know what Giuliani has done. Giuliani actually took down a lot of the mafia people in New York. So he's well known in New York, right? So I sat with him downstairs and we had a good conversation talking and trying to understand his relationship with Trump, what he could possibly do for Liberia. There was a lot of things that Giuliani could do. There was a lot of things that he could really do, and he really could help the country. Somehow, I'm not sure if that information was transferred or translated to the government, but I don't know what happened. I'm not going to get into the details on that. But so here's the thing.
Okay.
Here's one thing I'll share with you. A lot of the people operating at the U.S. Embassy in Monrovia, some of those folks are CIA operatives, right? I mean, it's known. If you read any report in the Library of Congress, you will know some of the reports are written by CIA operatives, right?
Okay.
I think the government is being misled in thinking at times that some of the folks over there are their so-called friends. The former ambassador, she used to hang out with them a lot. You'd have photos of her kicking football. So I think they had the impression that she was like a friend. Unbeknownst to them, this woman is writing monthly reports and sending it to the State Department in terms of what is going on in the country on the ground. Chris Smith didn't just wake up one morning because he was smoking some weed or something and say, oh, I'm going to talk bad about Jefferson Koji or talk bad about Liberia. No, Chris Smith receives intelligence information from the State Department. So when he makes those statements about what's going on in Liberia, calling the government kleptocratic and all that stuff, he's making it from an informed position. Right?
And Laura, talking about informed position, let's talk about the Federal Reserve in New York, right? Now, this guy is in the U.S. He's privileged to any information given his role in Congress. So he has the half facts, in his hands when he said it. When the president came to power, they depleted the money that the Liberian government had in its reserve. Is that not true? That is true. And again, the millions that have been spent for lobbying, we are yet to see any evidence. Is it that our government is talking to the wrong people? Or is it that our government using the wrong people to communicate their messages for lobbying? But what is holding back, the dividend that they hope to achieve for the benefit of the country? What is holding it back?
The government is using the wrong strategy, plain and simple. So imagine this, Anthony. If every day you're going out there and threatening your citizens, if they try to protest, which is their constitutional right, you are shooting them with water cannons. You're looking at the Human Rights Report and it's telling you, Anthony, you're doing something wrong. You think any amount of money you spend in Washington, D.C. is going to change that image of you being an autocrat? No. Change your behavior. Take a look at Paul Biya in Cameroon.
Okay.
Paul Biya is spending $55,000 per month. At one time, he was spending around $100,000 per month for lobbying efforts in Washington, D.C. Where did that get him? He landed a lot of his government officials still landed on the Global Magnitsky Act, and it got sanctioned by the U.S. government. So throwing money at a problem that can be fixed by changing the way how you interact with your people, that's not the solution. The solution is not throwing money in Washington, D.C. The money is actually changing the behavior on the ground. You can't have people disappearing, being killed. No investigations is producing any, you're not convicting anyone. And then you expect the U.S. to say, oh, because you hire Ed Royce, that's going to solve the issue of missing, of mysterious death in your country. That's not going to solve it. I don't understand why they're doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Hate to use that phrase, but that's insanity, right?
Yeah. But Larry, let me bring this to your attention. You talk about the killings of people, mysterious deaths, the auditors. Up to now, there's not a serious and convincing investigation. The government is on record for using a logical conclusion. We are yet to find one in any of these investigations, Larry. But my point I'm making here is that we have similar incidents, happening during Salif time, and we can also point to similar, occurrences in other governments. But yet, administrations, unlike that of President Weah, managed to win the attention of the U.S., managed to secure significant investment despite these things happening. So, what is the difference here? What did those people do despite these ugly reports for which they were able to get funding, for which they were able to get the attention of the White House, and that this government is not doing, and yet we are pointing to the reports as being the only reason why they're not getting through?
That is a great and important question, and a great contrast and comparison between the two administrations. So it's the U.S. government will have to admit that Sirleaf was a complete failure because they put all their support behind her.
Certainly.
The U.S. government spent $2.6 billion in trying to rebuild Liberia, excluding the $600 million sent during the Ebola time. They put a lot of money behind Sirleaf. Remember Christiana Tai had to resign because she said she couldn't prosecute the president's son?
Yeah.
There was nepotism in that administration. If you take a look at the central bank report, I think I wrote an article about this, and I don't know if I shared it with you, but I think the Sirleaf administration at some point even sabotaged the economy. I know it's a harsh thing, it's cynical, but I think in a way she kind of set up George Weah for failure economic-wise. But let's go back in terms of how she did all these things and continued to win award. Even when she left, she won the award from, what's his name? I can't think of his name. Starts with a B.
Ibrahim.
Yeah. Right? The Mo Ibrahim Award. Even after she left, with all of the stuff that her sons did, bankrupting locale and all that stuff. So here's the deal. Madame Sirleaf had huge support from the U.S. government. Remember when Charles Taylor was arrested? He was held in prison in Massachusetts back in 2005 because Samuel K. Doe had an extradition pending against him. And the Globe newspaper in Massachusetts filed a Freedom of Information request and wanted to know if Charles Taylor was a CIA operative, right? Charles Taylor mysteriously walked out of a prison, climbed down a window, jumped in a car, was taken to Staten Island, eventually crossed over. He drove down to Texas and crossed to Mexico. Then he ended up in Libya. Madame Sirleaf also supported Taylor at some point when she testified before the U.S. Congress. She was also in support of she said young people were being freedom fighters, but they were child soldiers. But with all of that, the U.S. pumped money behind her. So to answer your question, the U.S. would have to admit that they made a mistake in supporting Madame Sirleaf. So they couldn't come out and admit that. So that's why they didn't go after her. But we had an opportunity to audit her. But who knows why he didn't do that, The U.S. and this is the thing with the U.S., right? Because today we hear them talking about ISIS, the withdrawal from Afghanistan and all that stuff. Well, who do you think helped form ISIS? It was the U.S. government because they supported, back then in Afghanistan, it was called the Mujahideen. And when they were fighting the Russians, the U.S. offered support to the Mujahideen, That support eventually, when Mujahideen turned around and they started attacking the U.S., they started calling them ISIS. So the U.S. has a very, very funny history in terms of how they operate, who they support. One time they supported Madame Sirleaf, but they couldn't come out and admit that they were wrong in their support for her. Obama was a little pissed off with her because of the corruption. He wasn't very happy with that. So on the other hand, now he doesn't have that level of support from the U.S. government that they gave to Madame Sirleaf. That's why everything that he does is on the big screen. Everybody can see it.
Right.
It's highlighted. So he's just not surrounding himself with the right people to help him. So it kind of makes him look bad. And throwing money at lobbyists is not really going to solve the problem.
And Larry, to what you just said, right? The history of Mama Saleh, a role in a devastating civil war that robbed many of the future of Liberia, talking about the young people of their future. And this is the woman who will come to power, and she will have a United Nations mission in Liberia throughout 12 years, spending nearly over 500 million a year on peacekeeping mission. And upon that, the United Nations through UNDP sponsoring other projects. They help to make the woman look good despite of her record.
They threw a lot of money
now, this is my question. How could the U.S., knowing all this, would dance with this woman? And this is weird. This is in no way, shape, or form a support for weird, right? But when Saleh came in, it said that she said a standard that kind of, made the U.S. to say, okay, we can work with her. Could one of those standards be that, well, she went after Judy Bryant? Is this something, my question is this something the U.S. government was looking for from the Weir administration? Because we saw that wait and see period when he got elected. Was it something that they were looking for to come to him or to call him that they did not see? What do you think?
First of all, they were happy and glad that we had a peaceful transition of power, something that hadn't happened in decades, right?
Yeah.
They were hoping that he was going to fight corruption, like he said, because despite all the things the U.S. does, they're still pushing this whole thing about being a country that is in favor of the rule of law. The rule of law, the rule of law. These guys will arrest anyone over here. Bill Clinton, for having a girlfriend, he was put on trial.
Certainly.
Right, and impeached. It started with Whitewater, but eventually he got impeached because he lied about Monica Lewinsky. Certainly. So if they can impeach a president for having a girlfriend, they will put anybody on. Look, they raided Giuliani's home at 6 a.m.
Right, they did.
They were after anyone. So they expected human rights to respect human rights. And to also enforce the rule of law. This is why you have 108 people sanctioned in the Globe Mag. I would just call it Globe Mag for short. 108 people sanctioned, including the former president of the Gambia, that crazy guy. And when his wife tried to help him, they sanctioned her as well. So they were hoping Weir would come in and would do something in terms of fighting corruption, and would do something in terms of with human rights. But you nailed a good point, Anthony. The United Nations being in that country helped Madam Sirleaf tremendously with the economy and everything else.
Right.
So pull them out. It wasn't so much that they were doing a lot of stuff in there to keep the peace, but they were helping the economy in terms of, money coming in.
Certainly.
To pull them out right at the time she knows she was leaving, that was going to be a huge impact on the economy. So that was where we should have paid close attention. The second thing was the printing of all that excess money. Printing excess money to flood an economy has always been used by countries to sabotage another country's economy. Madam Sirleaf did that in 2013. The currency, Liberian currency, dropped its value. They recognized that in 2014. That's when they started issuing the central bank bills, And when it comes to bills and bonds, I've been doing that stuff for 30 years. So I know how securitization and how bills and bonds work. I was a vice president at JP Morgan, right? So I did that stuff for a long time. So they should have known better to not print that excess amount of money and to not pull out the United Nations. I mean, they extended the United Nations peacekeeping force, but to pull it out and then print that excess money, and then for Weir and his team to come in and have, missing money, Then it got even worse when they tried to pull money out of the Federal Reserve Bank and send it back there. When you look at the accrual report, it's a complete mess. But let me say this, Anthony. Messing with the US banking system can get you in a lot of trouble. It can get anyone in a lot of trouble. In fact, the former finance minister from Mozambique, Michael Chang, you know that guy is still sitting in prison over in South Africa?
Tell me something.
Let me see if I can show this guy real quick, because Michael Chang, and let me see if I can share this with your audience to kind of, let's try this.
All right, let's do that.
So let's see if you can see. Are you seeing Michael
Yes,
Chang?
yes. I'll put it on the screen now for folks to see. Yeah.
Michael Chang is the former finance minister from Mozambique. He got picked up he was part of a huge scam which involved the US banking system.
Right.
So when this whole Eton Iboma thing popped up, I was like, oh man, these guys in Liberia, I was like, these guys are going to get in trouble, pulling money from the US central bank in order to not the money washing thing, but with the Eton thing, I thought they were going to get in trouble with that because it's the same thing that Michael Chang pulled in Mozambique.
Right.
He ran an operation in Mozambique where they borrowed a little over $2 billion in euro bonds. When he borrowed that money, somehow a lot of the money disappeared. The Mozambican government wasn't even aware in terms of what was going on. Michael Chang he fled the country, but because he had some investments here in the US, the court in New York, in Brooklyn, New York, the Eastern District, put out an arrest warrant to have him arrested. In 2018, South Africa picked him up and he's been in prison fighting extradition to the US. There was a whole bunch of people involved. Some have pled guilty, but the US will go anywhere to grab someone and jail them, right? So Madam Sirleaf and the people working her administration could have been in a lot of trouble, but the US couldn't come out and admit that they made a mistake in supporting her. You know, you would stick with what you put your heart and mind behind for the mere reason you don't want to be embarrassed. You know, but hey, we either could do something different, and they haven't done anything different, but they expect again to start hiring some of these lobbyists, and hopefully, miraculously, things will work out for them. It has to work out for Paul Biya in Cameroon, and it's certainly. And I think at some point, Ed Royce is going to kind of pull himself away from this. I mean, I reached out to his office to find out if he can give a comment, because there's a conflict of interest. You know, he's working for Liska. Now he's going to work directly for the government of Liberia. There's a conflict of interest.
Certainly it is. Yeah. Hey, folks watching us, yes, this is Focus on Liberia. I have with me a partner and a friend, Larry Kennedy, and this is why we are focusing our discussion on. The Liberian government just made a decision of recent where a former U.S. Representative Ed for a period of 4 months. They are giving him the total amount of $100,000 to do some work with our maritime arm. And he has been working with them directly or indirectly, if you want to put it whichever way. And they have been giving him 10,000 United States dollars. But now, is there actually a new portfolio? What difference is that going to make? Is there a good investment? And we see our government is yet to get the attention of the White House. Why? You know, President we are came to power. He then accurately, we can say, had no terrible political record, you know, on him. So U.S. should be able to work with him. But we don't see that the likes of Sally, who have all the records, they work with her. So what is going on here? We really want to know. And so, Larry, let me come to this. There are some Liberians, especially those who support the government and the president, saying, well, what are you guys talking about here? We see USA in Liberia. We see the U.S. government channeling millions of dollars through USAID in Liberia. So when you say the U.S. government is now working with the Liberian government. You guys just trying to play, name politics. The U.S. embassy is there, is working. So what you guys talking about? Liberia State has an embassy in the U.S. There's an ambassador. We have somebody. They say all these things. Do they have a point? Are they missing a point?
They're missing the point. And I say that because as someone who does data for a living, I like to deal with facts. When you hear that Liberia is receiving $61 million or so, you have to look at what exactly is making up that amount. A lot of it, Anthony, is debt. Maybe 2 or 3 million of that is a grant, but a lot of the money that Liberia is receiving is debt. Over the past 3 years, Liberia's debt to GDP has doubled, meaning Liberia has borrowed more money over the past 36 months than the previous administration. So when you hear that USAID is giving this money, and some of the money hasn't even been completely transferred, it's pledged. So if I'm saying, Anthony, I'm going to pledge to you $500, but how much did I actually send to you via Cash App? I sent you $50. People would say, oh, he pledged $500 to Anthony. That's fantastic. But the bottom line is, how much did Anthony actually receive? There's a difference between pledge and the amount of money you actually receive. In addition to that, the Liberian government is borrowing a ton of money. I'm not making it up. Take a look at the central bank's website. It's there. Go to the IMF website. The most recent amount of 60-something million, 59 million of that is in the form of a loan from the IMF. So when people say, hey, they're receiving money from the American government, yeah, sure, they're receiving money, but not as much as under the Sirleaf administration. They're still receiving more money compared to other countries like Sierra Leone, Rwanda, and other African countries because of Liberia's close relationship with the US, but it's not as much. It can be even more. What's hurting them is also this misappropriation that took place. Look at what I think I saw something published recently where there was some misappropriation in excess of like 6 million from the donor's account during the Sirleaf time, not under WIA, during the Sirleaf time. And there was an audit done, and the audit showed that there was misappropriation.
Yes, of $6 million, right? And the president even sent a communication to the national legislature to look into that. And you are right. It just, they just discovered that in recent audit that they just did. I mean, why they didn't start this thing from the get-go? Why they were not flagging these things? Why now? That's the question. Go ahead.
Why didn't the donors even mention that when Sirleaf was in there? You see, they waited. You remember the most recent, I think about 10 or so ambassadors recently hit the Liberian government also for misappropriating money in their account. So on the one hand, Sirleaf does it. No one says anything. WIA does it. And the sky is falling. So part of it has to do with the image, Part of it has to do with if WIA can rebrand himself. But I keep hearing a lot of people saying he's someone who doesn't change. So we have to wait and see. But there is an imbalance in terms of the way how Sirleaf behaved and the way how WIA is behaving. The problem is if he was surrounded by some very good people, honest people who would tell him the truth, not sycophants, I think he would be able to do something about it. But again, people say that he doesn't change. Yeah. And
so,
again,
Larry, let me bring this to your attention, right? And this is why I don't get when our brothers and sisters go about celebrating every little $4, $5, $6 million here and there, and they will wait 5 years later. They don't see any significant change in their own life, and yet these people are celebrating. How much money didn't go into the country during Madam Sirleaf time? Millions and billions of dollars went into Liberia. Has Liberia changed? Do we have reliable electricity? Do we have reliable water? No, we don't have any of these things. And so that's why sometimes I wait, watch, and wonder when our friends are celebrating 200 million here and there. So here is it now. The date here is small, so let me read it for you here. This is dated December 15, 2020. Sierra Leone selected for a 400. This is pretty close to Liberia's budget. Sierra Leone selected for a 400 million compact grant. This is free money going to the government of Sierra Leone. Imagine if they were Liberia. Our people would be dancing. So what I want you to explain on is that just as Liberia getting little crumbs, our neighbors and other countries are getting so much money. Is there something that we're not doing right, that they are doing right? For we, they are getting more money, free money in most cases as well.
Yeah, so you have to look at the rules in order to get the MCC compact. And one of the criteria to get the MCC compact is first of all, you have to be a poor country, and Liberia, Sierra Leone fit in that category. But you also have to show a propensity, show that you have the ability to grow your economy and to help your people. That is where Liberia is hurting, and this is where Sierra Leone has been doing much better. There are 4 criteria. Sierra Leone has done much better in terms of growing their economy and helping the people out of poverty. I mean, I can get to the data. I mean, some people can argue, but they're not doing it based on evidence. So I can share my screen and I can go to the data.
Do that.
So
let's show the people some numbers.
Yeah, let's talk based on evidence. So let me come in here and let me see if I can share this screen. So let me come, and this is the World Bank database, right? So let me go in here and let me put Liberia up. Okay, so we're looking at GDP per capita. GDP per capita is a great way to measure how well income in your country, the amount of goods and services being produced, how well you're doing, right? So let me just kind of extend this data a little bit and let me compare it to Sierra Leone. So let's take a look at Sierra Leone, for example. So, and let's kind of close the gap a little bit more to maybe about 5 years or so. So you can see at one time, Liberia GDP per capita in 2013, Sierra Leone had a very high GDP per capita, but right around 2015, Sierra Leone economy tanked.
Yeah.
But somehow Sierra Leone did extremely well. And when you look over the past maybe 2 or 3 years, 2018, the economy has been going up while Liberia has been going down. That's one of the major criteria for the MCC compact. Your economy should be growing.
Yeah.
Let me close this a little bit more to put it in perspective. So Liberia shows a negative GDP per capita growth rate, whereas Sierra Leone has a positive. We can't blame Ebola because Sierra Leone also had Ebola.
Certainly.
We can throw Guinea in there as well and see what Guinea is doing. So we can look at Guinea as well, and we can see Liberia is all the way on the bottom.
Yeah.
Guinea also had Ebola. So in order to qualify for some of these grants, these, we call them supranational banks. You know, they want to see that you're doing well in order to give you some of this money. You know, Liberia hasn't done well. And when I hear people saying this is the best president ever, it makes me wonder, are they doing it based on fact? Or is it just sentiment? Or is it just being a sycophant? We can have a conversation on data any day of the week. And the data doesn't lie.
And talking about the data, talking about performance, talking about meeting some of these benchmarks, if I can put it that way, to be qualified for some of these financial instruments, our finance minister comes to mind. I'm a political guy. Our president went on record and said, hey, my government is like a football team. You know, he's an icon, football, so that guy knows his stuff. So many have believed in him. President, we are talking about his government. You know, it's like a football team, and that when one does not perform, you will be substituted. I mean, we in second half now. So we playing their game. Sierra Leone is in the game with us. Ghana is in the game with us. We are behind. These guys are leading us 15 to 20 goals. Our foreign minister is yet to score a single goal. He's the striker on the field. Look at the numbers. It's one budget shortfall after the other. You are a numbers guy. So when I heard the guy saying we have a budget surplus, wait a minute. How the hell you have a budget surplus, Mr. Twe, and you owe all these people? So make sense of these numbers and why this guy is still on the job, looking at how terrible the numbers have been in our situation.
This is where you simply have to look at the data and say, is what the finance minister is saying true and accurate? I think I was going to write an article about it, but I think I put a post out there because it was just kind of ridiculous that they would say there's a budget surplus. You know what they're treating as budget surplus? And I'm not even making it up. So please go and take a look at the central bank report, right? Look at the 2020 central bank report. It's in there. They are treating money that they're borrowing as surplus. I'm going to borrow $1,000 from Anthony. Oh my goodness, look at that. I have a surplus. You have a debt. You don't have a surplus. You got to pay that money back. It only becomes yours if you don't have to pay it back. Then we can say it's a grant. Then you can treat that as a grant. But if you're borrowing the money, you can take that money you're borrowing now and start treating it. No, report the numbers accurately. They are treating a lot of it. And first of all, the data coming to the central bank is coming from the Ministry of Finance. So the Ministry of Finance is being a player and a referee in the same game. The government needs to put a lot of money to ListGIS. Support that organization. Let them build a better data bank. When students come to my finance and economics class, the first place I send them is to something called FRED, the Federal Reserve Bank Economic Data Bank. The Federal Reserve Bank Economic Data Bank of St. Louis. And first of all, we have 12 Federal Reserve banks here in the U.S. There are 12. Yeah. So you need good, competent data, and you need people to fact check some of what the minister is saying, because some of the stuff he's saying just doesn't make sense. But I hear people repeating it, and they figure that, hey, by us repeating it over and over, it will somehow become true.
It'll become true, yeah.
That's not how data works. Data is just plain fact, cannot be disputed. So you're repeating that, hey, you have a budget surplus, when in fact, we know you're playing with the numbers. You're kind of not being honest. You're being deceptive, right?
Yeah. Larry, let's bring in our viewers here. Let's read some comments from them. This is Gabriel Carter. He's an affiliate here at Focus on Liberia. He said, thank you. He also a numbers guy. Let's hear from Chris. But Mr. Professor, the United States said Chris Smith was not speaking for them. Well, that's the Biden administration that said he does not speak for them. That does not in any way mean that the guy was not speaking as an official of the U.S. government. He's a representative. He's an official. But the Biden administration was saying, he's not part. Of course, he is not part of the Biden administration. They were speaking as an executive branch of government. So that's what they were saying. You have to understand diplomats, and maybe your diplomats you have can explain that to you better. And, so let's hear from Gabriel again. I am glad Larry Kennedy isn't shying away from the failure of the previous administration. Larry is my kind of guy, man. The truth will set us free, the Bible said, right? Gabriel again, Chris Gay, just because the U.S. stated that he wasn't speaking for them does not mean he was not speaking from an informed place. So the truth that is the truth that matters. Well, it doesn't matter where it's coming from, but it's just the truth. What he said, can we find out whether he didn't say the truth? He said the truth. Our government is on record for taking money from our reserve. No better explanation whatsoever about how they spend the money. And, let's hear from George here. George said that is a good question, but the answer has to do with Sally's connection. An African-American through Ambassador Greenfield, a sympathizer of democratic government in America, that person said. Let's hear this person. Samuel said, wow. I don't know why he said wow too. Apparently that was when we're showing that former finance minister who is in jail now because of the deeds that he carried on. This is Siata. She's a big fan of Focus on Liberia here. This is Saba. Saba said the free market of Liberia's government using the invisible hand. It should be producing or lobbying for service that benefits the economy, not spending without a positive result. And that's the point Larry and myself making here. You're spending the money while you're getting in return, while they pay us for the people you are trying to serve. Gabriel, again, money that aren't deploying, money that we are not deploying properly. Our debt to GDP is so high that we can't even generate enough revenue to service the very debt that we're taking. This is a sinking ship. The guy knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And let me touch on that before you go to the next comment, what he just mentioned.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Liberia, like so many other African countries right now, because of COVID, they're not servicing the debt right now. So a lot of these countries, like the IMF, the World Bank, there's a program in place that's allowing them to defer, to push further down the road, repaying this debt, but it has to be paid.
Oh, sure.
So they're kind of kicking the can down the road right now, so to speak, right? So, but
and does that mean the more will pay because the interest continue to accrue?
No,
right?
It's not going to accrue in this instance. It's not going to accrue. But the problem is because the economy is not growing, so you're not making, you don't have a lot of revenue being generated. How is it? And you keep increasing your debt. At some point, this is where they're going to get in trouble, and they can't keep financing debt by printing money. That's not going to work because it's going to lead to higher inflation. So at some point, they're going to have there's going to be a reckoning. This is where they will have to explain, how do you, I see Sam Jackson is messaging me saying that he's traveling and he couldn't get on the call. But definitely at some point they will have to pay that debt because the debt has doubled over the past 3 years. That's going to be a problem.
Yeah, like here from Tukpa Kwe, Norway was auditing its development aid for electricity at the McAfee Dam when it discovered the 6 million was misappropriated his right. So that's why we're talking about the 6 million. And I was telling you, President, we had sent a letter to the legislature to look into. So it was the Norwegian government that were auditing the money that it has spent in Liberia for the McAfee Dam, and they realized that $6 million cannot be accounted for. So now our government is more than compared because the government needs this donor country to contribute to us. So now they're acting like they're serious. You should have done this, and you should have taken stock of the economy when you took over. You had a turnover note that you did not even investigate. And so you have this mess on your hands. Go ahead.
What else is hiding? What else is going on that he's not aware of?
Fine. Why, if this government had not pointed out this, then what would have become the story?
Exactly. So, but these debt have to be repaid. If you misappropriate, especially, here's the thing. If you misappropriate money from, like you said, or like the Norwegians just mentioned, you're going to get in trouble. Several years ago, 2 Liberians misappropriated over $1 million or so of USAID money. There was an extradition paper sent from the Department of Justice to grab them. They served time in federal prison here in the US. I'm not going to call their name because they pay their dues. They pay. So if you start misappropriating US taxpayers' money, you're going to land in trouble, right? If Madam Sirleaf did it and there was no audit done to prove it, that's a huge mistake on Mia's part. When you come to Liberia, $2.8 billion, a little over $2 billion, $600 million in aid during Ebola time. Take a look at the hospitals. Where's all that money?
Well, all that money, $600 million, that is a lot of money that they could have used, to renovate the hospitals, equip them, and even train personnel to keep the hospitals running. But Ellen left, and we have a crumbled healthcare system.
Yeah.
Everything crumbled. Everything crumbled. Ambassador Roosevelt asked them, he said, "Hello, Anthony Ambassador. Ambassador to where?" All right, I'm just kidding. Mr. Dan, thank you here for following here Focus on Liberia. Let's hear from Yuma. Because Ellen did it, it doesn't make it right. That's what we're saying. I hope you're understanding us here. That's what we're saying. Let's hear from Roosevelt Good. Within the next 2 years, when we count the cost, we would then appreciate the damage that this administration has caused Liberia. Of course, he's right. Look at. I mean, this audit that the Norwegian government is telling. It's just all over the place. Okay, let's hear from Ezekiel Kennedy. Well, I think it will be necessary for all African countries, including our own Liberia, to learn how to produce and make their own money instead of depending or begging Western governments for money all the times. I don't care how free money is given to other countries or Liberia. That is not the right way to go. It's wrong today. It's wrong tomorrow, he said.
But I think Ezekiel is kind of speaking figuratively when he says that he wants us to produce our own money. I mean, he means he wants us to kind of build up our own economy, because money is only printed, well, the paper that comes, the money comes from a crane. Crane pretty much supplies the rest of the world in printing, generating the paper that money is printed on, and printing money. Even the U.S. money is printed on crane paper, which is really cloth. It's 75% cotton, 25% linen. But yeah, we need to build up our economy, and we can build up our economy with the right strategy. Tourism, huge opportunity in Liberia, but how are you going to attract tourists when you have people missing and you have crime at such an outrageous level in Liberia? The housing sector, construction, we have a lot of young people that we can put to work in the construction sector. How do we do it? There's a strategy. I wrote a paper on this, and I was in a meeting at the State Department with some of the ministers, the government ministers, a few years ago. And I handed them a paper in terms of how they can get a lot of young people to work in the construction sector. This was also a paper that I discussed with, of all people, Ed Royce, because Ed Royce at the time was head of OPIC, the Overseas Partners Investment Corporation. OPIC is now the DFC, Development Finance Corp. So there are ways out there to do it, even in the absence of all of the, the logistic and the infrastructure challenges we have, but you have to put a little bit of money into smart strategies. Who do you attract for tourism to Liberia? I would first try to attract Liberians in the diaspora.
Yeah.
I was talking to a professor in Hawaii. He wanted to come and do some ecotourism business in Liberia. He said he loved that kind of stuff. We don't have people with a strategy to attract those kind of people. This is where the foreign direct investments come from. So we don't have a real strategy in order to build the economy. So he's absolutely correct. We need to kind of build our economy and stop begging foreign governments for money, because if they say no, what do we do?
I know. I couldn't agree more. Let's hear from Vafli. Yeah, Vafli said, "Thanks, Professor Kennedy." And this is Carolina Duncan. Great discussion. You only find great discussion here. This is what we do, man. Okay, let's hear from Toba again. Toba is giving some good information here. Toba, thanks for contributing here. He said also an audit of the road funds for 2018-2020 show $20 million of the $48 million collected by LRA was diverted. If this information is true, this is corruption on an industrial level. If this is true, I'm not sure, because if you collect 48 and then 20 is gone, that is almost 50% of the money being diverted. Where did that money go? Anybody showing interest in our government to investigate, to trace the money, to see where the money gone? We're talking about youth in Liberia don't have jobs.
Yeah.
We're talking about not having vocational institutions that are training a huge number of people. And this money is just going in breeze, if this is true.
So, Anthony, you tell me now, how does Ed Royce make that look better in the eyes of the American? How much money can you pay someone like Ed Royce to explain something like that away? Or how much can you pay someone like Reba to make something like that go away? No amount of money can hide when you do an audit and it finds out that money is missing and no one is prosecuted. That's the problem. The rule of law is not standing in Liberia. It's going to be hard to develop a country. No country has ever developed without the rule of law. And Liberia is not going to be any exception.
And Larry, I hope Ed Royce is not going to be collecting this money from poor country Liberia, where you have people waiting for opportunity and the opportunity. I live in that country. I've seen people born in a Zin roundhouse that stay there up to age 50. Unfortunately, some of them die without seeing anything. So, Elroy, if you're listening to us, you've been given $100,000 to help in some way a country that has majority of its people hungry every day. I hope you will use that opportunity to get to the bottom of some of these things that is happening that are keeping our people down. I hope you will just do that. But maybe I should agree with you. If he sees enough, he might be able to say, you know what, this is not the right job for me because I can't stomach this, I'm saying. I hope so.
Yeah. And maybe in some future conversations, we will talk about who's really ripping off the country, and that's Liska. Liska is ripping off Liberia. I mean, Panama right now is the #1 ship registry. Panama is pulling in hundreds and hundreds of millions. Liska representing Liberia, when you take a look at the books and records, and this is stuff, again, that Liska, by law in the US, has to publish with FARA, the Foreign Agents Registration Act. They have to publish that stuff. So the data is out there. So I'm not making anything up. When you look at the numbers, Liska is ripping off this Liberia big time. We need to find out. Yeah, go ahead, Anthony.
No, I was just about to say, and I want you to speak to that too. Maybe we should get to L, let him come and explain to us how Liska, its word and his contribution is in any way helping to better the situation in Liberia. We need to know.
I wrote him, I sent him an email, a couple of people in his office an email, and I would do my best to try to get some, because I know a few people over here, some federal people, to come on your show and we can have some of these conversations. So I will also try to see if I can get Chris Coons to be able to come on the show, and maybe he can, he can talk about, because Biden just put out his new strategy for Africa.
For Africa, yeah.
Yeah, and his main focus is on human rights. So that is going to be the
challenge. And do we have a government that can seize the moment on that?
Yeah, you see, that's going to be the challenge.
Okay, think about that. Let me bring Mr. Wajlo in here. I admire greatly the importance of number. What I have problem with Christopher is that Representative Smith, being in office as representative during the Mandela Elling government, with all those irregularities, I understand the demystification given. However, they should not have given President Elling Justin Sirleaf free pass. And that's what Larry said. They're giving a free pass. They should admit, I mean, look at the money that came in. Look at the country today. I mean, they just left, just barely 3 years ago. You can't say it's Joshua that came and destroyed the hospitals. Institutions are being eroded and given the incompetence that we see, but it's not that all was rosy and then they just came and destroyed. No. So yes, we agree with you.
Let me share something else, and I'm not going to get too much into details. So I was in a meeting at the State Department with a couple of ministers from Liberia, and I give credit where credit is due. They're building a database to keep track of the work that the NGOs are doing in Liberia. Right? Because with all the money Liberia received, you look around and you're asking yourself, well, why do we have 1,050 women dying when they're giving birth to someone else? The maternal mortality rate is very high. Why do we have almost the number of children, infant mortality in the country is so high with all the money that Sirleaf received? So the government was putting together this database. The interesting thing is, one of the head of USAID was questioning the government as to why they were building this database. And I'm like, this is insane. The government has a right to do that,
right?
To find out what it is all these NGOs are doing in there. The FHI 360, the Tetra Tech, the ABT Associates, all these guys are in Liberia. What are they doing? For the US government to question another government as to why they're checking up on these, because the NGOs went to USAID and complained. So that goes back to one of the comments that's saying we need to be able to get our own money and grow our own economy. So, people are not questioning us when we do these things. They turned a blind eye to certain things Madam Sirleaf was doing. We and his team came in and it simply made it worse because they didn't audit Madam Sirleaf, number one. And number two, they got entangled in this whole 16 billion or 15 billion, and then pulling money from your reserve account in the US, and then that money not being used to clean up the currencies in the country. It goes to show that, hey, when Chris Smith comes out and make these statements, that's because he has information. The Kroll report, there are 3 versions of the Kroll report. There's one version that the US government put out there for public consumption. There's a redacted version that is out there that a lot of people don't get to see. The government has one. And then there's the version that you said send over here to the State Department. So when someone like Chris Smith is saying something, like someone mentioned, he's saying it from an informed position. He knows stuff. He gets briefing. That's how it works in the US. These guys are briefed on what's going on. Sure, he's not speaking for the Biden administration, but Chris Smith, Susan Rice, Ed Royce, these were the guys who got Charles Taylor doing time in a British prison. These are very powerful people. Chris Smith is a very powerful guy. There are a lot of people on the sanctions list. Paul Biya, he got sanctioned because of the Globe Mag thing that Chris Smith sponsored. When Chris Smith speaks, pay attention. He's not just some regular Joe. And he puts Liberia government official on this list like I'm hearing he's planning to do. And I've filed requests for information relating to that. I've already filed that stuff.
All right, good.
I want to see what's going to happen. He puts Liberia government, and you see the travel ban thing is also taking place right now. There's certain people not coming to the US. That's because
I had Carlos Gray. Yeah, he said there's no such thing going on. But I won't expect that because his justification was that, look, what are you talking about, Anthony? You think the U.S. government is some kind of coward government that will not tell you what it's doing? He went and started like, hey, look at Vanish Sherman, right? Do you not know? Was there not a report out there? It was out there. When the United Nations, in consultation with the U.S., have people that burning down urine and all these people, was that not made known? Those things were made known. So that's, he's trying to dodge the issue. But there's one thing I want to bring to your attention here, Larry, and which is NGOs in poor countries, Liberia in particular. These guys, powerful governments, channel huge money through them for the benefit of Liberians or Liberia. What we see is, and you have authority over this, out of 50% of the money intended for Liberia is being squandered through administrative costs and all that. And then the little that is left, the channel is through, community organizations, and at the end of the day, what gets to the people is like zero or little.
It's
how,
scam.
Looking at the numbers, how can we as a country try to go to this, NGOs operation? Because if you look at it, the money is intended for Liberia, but they just have to channel it through them. How do we adapt a policy and approach as a country, as a government, so that our people tend to benefit more, other than these bureaucrats or expatriates, that carry on the implementation of these projects, taking, a huge chunk of the money? How can we do that?
So I actually did my research on the NGOs work that they're doing in Liberia. I actually did a complete study on that over a couple of years. I did a complete study on that. And I've had conversations with some of the big 5 NGOs operating in that region. When you look at the central bank data, look at the outward remittances, money leaving the country. A lot of that money leaving the country is because of these expats and these NGOs. It's a revolving door. The U.S. government puts out sort of a bid for a project. The people who win this bid are usually U.S.-based NGOs. So the millions and millions in funding, in grants, go into Liberia, ends up right back in the U.S.
In the U.S.
In order to change that, number one, we need to have a policy. This is where the legislators, and if they were a serious group, they could have taken a stand against it, right? There needs to be a policy that and you see, you have to mandate that Liberians have to be in on these projects so the money can stay in Liberia. The money just doesn't leave. You have to be able to measure. I will give you a little inside scoop. Are you aware that there are some NGOs in Liberia right now receiving millions and millions of dollars, and they're fabricating the monitoring and evaluation reports? They're fabricating those reports. It's all made up.
That's all they do.
That's what they do. And the reason is, if you go to the USAID website, the USAID has a database where you can read this stuff. It's in the USAID report where it tells you, the USAID report tells you the key measure of whatever project that we're working on. It doesn't add up. But yet, these NGOs are still operating in Liberia. Take a look at the big NGO, FHI 360, Family Health International. Those guys at one time were operating in Afghanistan until someone blew the whistle on them that they were giving some kickbacks to government officials. Someone wrote a letter to President Obama, busted them. The Department of Justice tried to prosecute those guys. They paid back the money. What did they do? They changed their name and reinvented themselves and ended up in Liberia operating as an NGO. They're in Washington, D.C. I was at a meeting in D.C. one time, and I couldn't believe it. These guys changed their name. They're a big operation now in Liberia. So people don't pay attention to some of these little details. We cannot grow that country relying on donations. It's never going to happen. It's not going to happen. We got to come up with a better strategy, and we have the resources to do it. Singapore has nothing, but yet look at Singapore. They've done extremely well. I know it's frustrating.
My brother, it's frustrating, and you know, Larry, if you come to think about technology, here you are, you're in is it Maryland you are right now?
I'm in Texas.
You're in Texas, okay, thank you. I'm in Minnesota. We're having a conversation about our country as though we sit in the same room. And we have our brothers and sisters watching. They have the opportunity to comment. We read their comment. I'm saying this to say that the tools are just right here.
It's here.
We have the education to develop a country of around 5 million people. We can use our own people. But you have our own brothers and sisters in there. For some reason, somehow, who like to do business with somebody from Jordan. You remember this deal that Mange were trying to strike with some Jordanian to do the groundwork for our airport? Do you want to tell me we don't have Liberians? There's a Liberian called Joseph Taman Jackson. He was an executive of the CDC. This guy worked for the United Airline for his life. And that's the department in which he worked. You can't reach out to that guy. Then you went to some Jordanian guy to come and do that. The U.S., they will have to take the U.S. government and say, no, this is nonsense. How can you take these people? These people are complete security risk. No, we can't. America now step in, our government will not get to know that these are the wrong people to do business with. It just frustrates me over and over, my brother. We have the people. Find the people. These are your brothers and sisters. We all own the country together. When you have the opportunity given to you by our people, bring your brothers and sisters who have the right expertise, put them in the right places, and let's run with this country. Paul Kagame is doing that. Why we can't do that?
Marabio is doing that.
Marabio, right there, Sierra Leone.
Yep, Ghana is doing the exact same thing. They would search their diaspora. They would search in country and see if they have somebody who can do the exact same work before they outsource it to somebody else. A lot of, you see, and the Liberian government doesn't do a very good job of vetting people.
No, it's based on partisanship. It's based on friendship.
Yeah, that's the problem. That's why the whole Eton thing was a huge risk. You know what I mean? You can't go have Jordanians who may have some shady association with maybe a terrorist organization, and you don't know about that, and you want to put them in charge of your airport. That's a serious problem. You know, go check the not the FARA's website, but there's the SDN, the Specially Designated Nationals website. Put some of these people named in there, and you'll come to realize why the U.S. government is concerned when Liberia is doing business with certain people. You know how many companies in Liberia right now is on that list that LISCA has registered? There are quite a few. People should be concerned. You know, some of these people, the reason they're on the list is because they're tied to Lebanese people who are financing Hezbollah. The American government is going to be concerned. You know, you got Lebanese people who are financing Hezbollah, a terrorist organization, and they're operating directly in Liberia. Come on, man. You're not going to get the U.S., you know, helping you the way how they need to help you. You know,
my brother, I think we had a great conversation here.
Yes.
We want to say, you know, thank you for joining us here to have this conversation. We can always do this. It starts with talking, I guess, and then the people get conscientized, given the information that they receive, and then they support the idea that we have to change this in order to change our story.
Yeah,
And
we have
so
to educate the people.
we have to educate the people. Yeah, we
invest
need
in education.
we need to drive them along.
Mhm.
We need to drive them along because
Yeah.
it will take a kind of collective effort. And we can't do that when we dismiss ourselves and validate people we don't know, who don't know our country, who have no interest in our country. Their only interest is what they get and they take away from your country. I have interest in my country. You know, I come from a village. So I want the story of those villagers to be changed. Even Morovia is a village. I want that story to be changed. You think a guy from Jordan, he has time for you changing your story? It's what he gets out of every deal or any deal you offer him. Sorry, that's what he cares about. Go ahead.
And that's the point, Anthony. If you have someone from the U.S. trying to build your healthcare system, that is not good, because when they get sick, they're not going to use that same healthcare system.
No.
The person in Liberia knows that when he or she gets sick, they have to use that healthcare system. Hopefully, they will do their best to make sure the system is developed. Yeah. When you have government officials leaving the country to get treatment outside of the country, they're not fully vested in building the healthcare system. If they're sending their kids out of the country to be educated, they're not fully vested. They don't have a skin in the game to help develop the education system. You need to have a skin in the game to really understand. And this was why when I had conversations with people like Partners in Health and some of these other international NGOs, I said, you know, I don't think you guys really have a skin in the game, because you're only doing a job. You have a contract.
Oh, yeah. It's a contract.
Yeah.
But it's a contract. Well, my brother, we'll
take it up with another conversation another time.
Another time. Let me get your closing statement so we can call it a day here.
Yeah. So again, Anthony, I follow you and Dennis. I really like what you guys are doing here on Focus on Liberia. And hopefully this will be the start of educating the people. I like your calling, you know, to kind of educate and inform the people. So hopefully this would be a time where we would fact check what the government is saying compared to what they're actually doing. You know, don't come with sentiments. I want to come with evidence. You know, I teach MIS at the college level. I teach finance and economics. I've worked in banking for decades. I've offered solutions to some of the things that are happening in Liberia. Some people have accepted it. Some people have refused it. But still, we love our country. We try to do the best. So hopefully, Anthony, this will be the start of conversations, educating the people and informing them as well. So I hope my partner in crime, Sam Jackson, the economist, would be here next time when we have this conversation.
And we hope to have Mr. Jackson, his energy level, you know, despite his being around, is unmatched by his peers, right? So he has the energy to contribute. Jackson is passionate about Liberia. He wants to see a Liberia. This is his life, wanting to see a Liberia that he can be proud of. Again, we want to say thank you, Larry. I know you don't like me to call you Professor Larry, but you earn it. You're doing it. So, Professor Larry, thank you. Folks in cyberspace, this is how we will come to the end of yet another informative broadcast here. Focus on Liberia. We've had Professor Larry Kennedy. He will be here again, I guarantee you. We're having a conversation to start a program here where he and Sam Jackson would be the key presenters, and they will be called the Economist and the Professor. And they will be talking the numbers, they will be bringing the facts, they will be bringing the data. It will not be about that your sentiments thing you try to do. We're talking about country here. You want to tell me, oh, Amanda, my man, this is not that man that my man will not change the country. The country that our country, let us do what is right for Liberia. Let us debate what is right for Liberia, and it's not who is right for Liberia. That is why I sit here all the time to talk about Liberia. Larry, thank you so very much. Folks, thank you. The song says we are all Liberians and it's taking us home. We'll catch you next time. Bye-bye, folks.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home.